Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of an experiment. Probably going to be a multi-part series, we'll see, but we're going to be modding a blaster, and we're also going to be comparing it to an unmodded version of that blaster, and that blaster is the Adventure Force Springfire. So before we get started, let's do a quick review of the Springfire. It's by Adventure Force, manufactured by Buzzbee. It includes 4 Buzzbee darts. It is a simple rear prime single shot blaster with a 4 dart capacity. It has 4 barrels, but you need to manually rotate them to fire the next shot. Back has the instructions. Blaster is ages 8+ and has range claims of up to 80 feet. We'll see, probably in another video. So I bought this blaster at Walmart for $4.88 USD. It is a Walmart exclusive because it's under the Adventure Force brand. So without further ado, let's get this thing out of the box. So here we have the Springfire out of the box. This is all it comes with, your darts and your blaster here. First impressions, the blaster is not the most comfortable. This grip is kind of hurts a little bit. It's a lot of angles and sharp edges on it. Prime. It's not super heavy, but this handle is really kind of hard to grip. I prefer a T-pull or a ring or something. Trigger's okay. And barrel rotation, it's not the hardest, but you know, it is kind of annoying that you have to rotate it. But that's why I bought this blaster. It's very simple. There are no sights on the blaster, so good luck hitting anything. But it does look relatively cool, I will give it that. Nice clear plunger tube so you can see the plunger, so that's kind of neat. Here we have the Buzzbee logo molded into the blaster itself. But we're not here to review the blaster, we're here to mod it. And I did say before we were going to compare it to an unmodded version of it. So what's better than one Springfire? 2 Springfires. I have a second one here that I'm going to leave unmodded. Before we get into modding, we have to make a decision on which one we want to mod. And to do that, I'm going to be choosing the weakest of the 2. Because when you're modding a blaster, you're trying to make it better than it originally was. Or in our case, we're trying to make it better than the strongest one, which I don't know which one is the strongest one. And to determine that, we're just going to shoot it through the chronograph. I'm gonna shoot like 8 shots of Adventure Force darts through these blasters and see which one fires the slowest. And whichever one that one is, that one will be chosen to be modded. And to differentiate them, I'm gonna be marking them with a Sharpie. Not exactly sure where I want to put this, but I'm thinking on the underside of the handle. So we're going to mark one as number 1. So there's number 1. And the other one I'm going to label as number 2. So we'll see which one is the weakest right now. Alright, so here we have the chronograph set up. We have our Springfire number 1 here. We're going to fire 8 shots each. So let's see how this fares. 59, 49, 64, 53, 56, 66, 63, and 55. All right, so here's Springfire number 2. See if this fares any better. 63, 59, 57, 52, 58, error, 21, 69, 63, and 61. All right, so I'm just going to look over the averages here. Springfire 1 had an average of 57.88 with its maximum speed being 66 and its minimum speed being 49. And Springfire 2, we had average of 60.25, maximum of 69, and minimum of 52. So it never went down into the 40s. So Springfire 2 is the stronger one, and I could already kind of feel it too when pulling back the handle. It is a little bit heavier, so there is a lot more. And you can also hear the pops coming out of there. Now, those could just be the darts fitting better in the barrels, but this is not that scientific of a test, so not really gonna deal with that too much. I'm not really gonna lose sleep over it. Anyway, that's it with the test. I'm just gonna get started and modify this one. Well, there's something I forgot to mention. Why did I pick specifically the Springfire to do a modded thing on. Well, first off, it's a relatively inexpensive blaster, only being around $5. That's number one. Number two, it's a very simple blaster. Weirdly enough, I couldn't find a simple single shot spring powered blaster, at least at my Walmart. None of them were that simple. If they were single shot, they either were smart AR or had that weird fake smart AR where it's like a little cylinder that has a bunch of holes at the end of the plunger tube, and it's really weird, and that's something that Buzby does. I didn't want to deal with that, so I wanted a very simple one. And because the barrels don't rotate, it's not a revolver or anything, this one should be relatively easy to mod. So that's the main reason. Yes, I could have gone for something like a Jolt or something, but I've modded Jolts in the past, and the performance increase when modding my Jolts to a stock one was pretty much nothing. The only advantage the modded ones had were they could fire these half-length darts, but that's about it. And they're a little more reliable. And also, I can't find Jolts at any of the stores I have. They just have Aces, which are really hard to open up. That's another reason why I picked these, is because they are covered in screws, so they shouldn't be that hard to open and mod. So without further ado, let's get started by taking them apart, or at least the first one apart. So we're gonna start by opening up this blaster. This is our number one Springfire. We have our little red screwdriver, which we've seen on the channel before when opening up battery trays and stuff. Of course, I want to make a couple notes about modding here. First off, any modifications you make to the blaster has nothing to do with the company, the manufacturer of the blaster. Kind of voiding your warranty or anything else. They're not liable for any injury the blaster causes during the modification or after the modification. Every blaster is different. Every blaster has its own little quirks on how to open them, sometimes by glue, plastic clips, or the worst of them all, the worst offender, solvent welding. For those who don't know, solvent welding is basically taking a solvent and taking two pieces of plastic, and they basically melt together. It's like welding. It's hard to break them apart. You usually have to use a knife or a saw to break the connection, and then you're left with a nasty gap if you're not careful. But in this thing's case, it should be pretty easy. We're just gonna take the screws out. So we're gonna quickly do that. I know there's plenty of better ways of taking screws out, having like a little tray or something, but this is just how I do it. I take my screws. I don't take them out of the little holes yet. I just unscrew like so. Okay, let's see if we have any other little things on here. I don't feel like we don't have any solvent welds or anything. And there we have our internals. Very simple design. We have a couple of components that are found in pretty much every spring powered blaster. We have our plunger tube, plunger rod, piston head, our trigger, and our catch here. Yeah, not much to say about it. The only weird part that's not in a lot of blasters is this weird indexer here. Or not an indexer, it's more of a lock for the barrels, so when you rotate, that's what that weird click is when you rotate it. But yeah, it's a very simple design. So we're not just here to talk about blaster anatomy, we're here to mod the thing. And the first mod I'm going to be doing, at least the mod in this video, I'm going to be doing is removing the air restrictor. And we're just going to take the plastic chunks off first. Remove the trigger, kind of like chews into the plastic here so it's kind of captive. You want to slowly remove things and remember exactly where you put them. I'm going to remove our catch here. It also has a spring that is captive. Oh, you shouldn't like pops like that. We have our barrels here, and then we have our whole entire spring and plunger assembly. And it seems to all be, I don't know where that goes, but oh, it goes down here. It's like a cam groove or something, so we'll deal with that later. But yeah, it seems to all be solvent welded together. Here's our plunger rod and piston head assembly. I don't know if it's just me, but it does look a little bit maybe conical is not the right term for it, but tapered. It is a little smaller on the end than it is on the rest of the spring, so keep that in mind. It is a relatively heavy spring, so that's kind of cool. But this right here is our thing we want to look into. And this is always fun because this is where we run to solvent welding. This whole thing is solvent welded together. So sometimes you'll get lucky and it'll be glue and just use a heat gun. You'll usually use a heat gun to remove glue, but you can't do that with solvent welding because it melts the plastic together. Taking this air restrictor out might actually be more of a challenge than I thought. Seems like the only way I'm going to be able to do this is take it out from inside here. Pliers I have, I don't think they reach. And because it's solvent welded, it kind of makes it relatively impossible to take apart. So yeah, this is how they get you. This is the problems you'll run into in modding. Well, I'll see what I can do with this. I think we'll start by cutting into the front here. Maybe I can get lucky and just peel it out from the front. So I'm trying to rotate it sideways so I can start trimming. So I'm gonna get some pliers. We have some pliers. Sometimes you'll have to do this kind of stuff. What am I saying? You have to do this all the time when taking an air restrictor or something like this out. I think we can get the spring out first. We'll get that out. These springs that come with the focus for the air restrictor are usually not the best, and they're just like a little wire, so they're not really worth saving. It's going to require a lot of digging and cutting. So I wouldn't necessarily be afraid. Of course, if you are new to blaster modding, I'd say start off with something cheap and buy multiples. Always buy more than one when you're gonna mod a blaster. Until you've gotten good at it, and then you can start doing more expensive blasters. And I mean, I don't want to break the video budget, so that's why I chose cheap blasters to mod. The first blaster I ever modded was a Jolt. I don't know, I just felt like modding it. In fact, fun fact, I was actually going to make a video on me modding a Jolt, but I opted not to because it was really, really poorly made, and the Jolt wasn't actually better. This was a long time ago too, because I didn't even have the range to test it on or the chronograph. Quick update, the air restrictor is barely non-existent. I just need to get a good grip on it and pull it through. It's almost there. Oh, I just ripped another chunk off of it. I mean, that's better than nothing, right? Aha! All right, your air restrictor is gone. So now this opens up a whole window of opportunity. In fact, the whole house is open now. So some of the advantages of having air restrictors is it can improve performance. A lot of people say it does because the air restrictor is only allows a small chunk of the cylinder, because as soon as the dart's already away from the air restrictor, it's closed up, so the rest of the pressure is wasted. So that's just wasted potential right there. And another advantage of removing the air restrictor is you can fire different darts out of it, including half-length darts. And making your blaster fire half-length darts is actually quite simple after you removed the air restrictor. The next step, the pretty much final step of that, is to remove your dart posts. Dart posts are these little things, they're kind of like guide rods and stuff. They actually don't do much, at least in my experience. They don't improve straight shooting or anything, and they're just a hindrance. It all depends on your blaster, how easy these are going to be taken out. In this blaster's case, you can just clip those two little fins on the end there, the little wings, and the dart post will just fall right out. Other times you have to do a little more barbaric methods, usually using a pair of pliers, grabbing out of the dart post and just yanking till it comes out. So I'm only going to be taking one dart post out of this entire blaster because I want to compare the with and without dart post as well. See how simple that was, just to clip those wings in. And our dart post just falls right out, which means we can now place a half-length dart comfortably into the barrel. But anyway, now we have that. Let's put this blaster back together and see if it fares any better than the other stock spring fire. So while I was reassembling this blaster, I was wondering like what this piece was, all right? And looking into the mechanism a little bit more, it actually goes into this little slot here. Oh, why do we need a weird piece of plastic there? Well, this is actually a trigger lock. When the blaster is fully assembled and if the trigger lock is placed incorrectly, which it's just a lock to prevent you from pulling the trigger when it's not in place. I can't really demonstrate that because I put it together wrong. So if we rotate it, it's out of line. The trigger is now being held back by that little plastic thing. So that's a little trigger lock there. I'm just gonna take it out because when modding blasters, if you can take out a lock, take it out, you know? That's what it is. I don't recommend taking safeties off, but like things like that, where it's like, oh, for mechanical reliability or whatever, it's not really reliability, it's just a weird way that they prevent the blaster from shooting without the air restrictor, because I'm guessing its main purpose is so it can only fire when it's lined up. So you see, we have it lined up, the air restrictor is active, but when you move it slightly over, the air restrictor is actually being pushed in. So if I was to fire this blaster like that, it would launch the spring forward and make a loud snap, potentially breaking the blaster, which is the whole reason air restrictors are there in the first place. But because we have no air restrictor, there is no point for this lock to really exist. Yeah, it's always nice to remember how you assembled your blaster. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory here. You gotta make sure you assemble it correctly. I need to put I'm missing the spring catch. I'm missing the catch here. Sometimes it's a lot of trial and error. Did I have that? No, I have it correct. Difficult when there's spring tension on things. Also, it's kind of dangerous, but it's the risk of modding. You have to make sure everything's assembled and pretty much back to normal, except it's not going in. They're not assembling, so I guess we'll have to remove all the screws. Sorry if the camera is the footage is all weird looking, because I don't have a cameraman or anything like that. So something you might want to try on some lower powered blasters is try to prime them while they're not screwed together. This is just to see if it works, but don't recommend that on higher powered blasters. Some blasters will have different size screws, but a lot of the modern ones just use one size, so you don't have to worry. And another thing to mention is when screwing back into plastic, you want to reverse until you feel like a click. Then they'll go back into the same threads, because these are self-threading screws, self-tapping screws, so they're gonna make new taps, and you could basically hollow out a thing and just make it like a straight cylinder at that point, not actually thread it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that cover off. I don't really care at this point. Okay, so we actually have a slight problem. So the one without the dart post, if we rotate the barrels to over, it can't move any further because the lock, the little locking nub here, kind of uses it as a locking position. So you gotta take a screwdriver and you have to push it in. So I might have to disable the lock then and just have this thing kind of free floating. I'm not sure how fast it's gonna rotate or anything, but we'll see. It is a good idea that I left all the dart posts in, because that would have been pretty bad. All right, so let's just try it out. I'm gonna stick a normal standard dart in here and see if it still works. And still works. Yeah, and also at this point I probably should mention, you probably shouldn't dry fire this anymore, because it's no air restrictor, and this piston head is gonna slam right into the front of the piston here. So, but we can now fire half lengths. So I'm gonna stick this, push the Sharpie down the barrel, fires half lengths like no problem, like it was meant to, right? Let's get this thing back through the chronograph and see if we've increased performance. Here we are back at the chronograph, and for sake of testing, we're just gonna fire the original again, 8 shots. 53, 64, error again, 65, 56, 66, 66, 63, and 52. It actually did better than the original test at an average of 60.63. So we'll see how how the modded one fares. Something to mention, of course, the one without the dart post actually allows the dart to fit in easier. So this is without the dart post. 67. That was with dart post 72. 72. 71. Yeah, as you can see, there is a significant increase in power. We haven't even done anything to it. Yeah, I'm actually quite impressed. So 62, 63. Increased performance a lot. Now let's go back to the unmodded one again. Had an average of 60.63, like I said before. Minimum of 52, maximum of 66. The modded Springfire had a average of 69.13. with a minimum of 63 and a maximum of 72. So yeah, there is a big difference with the mod. So yeah, that's actually really cool. Oh yeah, before I forget, I'm gonna fire some half lengths through them. I realize I can't rotate the barrels because the half length's a little too short. 72. So I have to use the one barrel. Okay, so 70s. That's actually pretty good. 77 could potentially go to 80 if we mod it a little bit more. There are plenty of other mods we can do to this blaster, changing the spring, brassing the barrels. So let me know if you want to see that. Anyway, comment your thoughts about this video down below. Comment what else you want to see on the channel. Comment if you've modded a blaster before and how well did it go. Be sure to check out my other reviews. I'll have a playlist linked at the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.